welcome to the latest edition of In Focus. I'm your host, Cassidy Jo Fortin. March is Women's History Month. Our guests today are two fantastic ladies who strive to make sure that women have the resources they need to succeed and are celebrated. One is currently working on a documentary about women in leadership, and the other recently held an event for International Women's Day. Today, we are sitting down with the director of Cal State Fullerton's Women's Center, Elisa Flowers, and graduate student Tess Buckley. Thank you both for being here. Really glad to have you on the show.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So let's go ahead and we can just get started with you telling us a little bit about yourself. So Elisa, if you want to go first.
My name is Elisa Foreman Flowers. I'm currently the director of the Women's and Adult Reentry Center here at Cal State Fullerton. I've been on campus for almost a year, and it's been an amazing year. We've done some great work at the center that I'm really proud of. We just hosted International Women's Day, which went really, really well. We had great student participation, and students really got to talk about issues that are important to them, as far as feminism and womanism and what it means to be a woman.
Very cool. Yeah. And then Tess?
Awesome. I'm Tess Buckley. I'm a graduate student in the Human Communication Department. I'm working on my grad exit project right now, which is a documentary highlighting women's voices that are in corporate America to really get their story on how they shattered the glass ceiling. And also for them, it's a chance for them to give advice to young women today on how to climb that corporate ladder.
That's great. That sounds really nice. Elisa, talk a little bit about the Women's Center and the work that you do. You mentioned you do some great work, so I'd like to hear more about it.
Yeah, the Women's Center actually is kind of divided up into three programmatic areas. The first is Women and Gender Initiatives, and basically we do lots of different types of student engagement around issues of feminism, what it means to be a woman, women in leadership, intersectional identities. So we have different discussion groups that focus on some of these topics. We also have large-scale events like International Women's Day. We also host a couple different conferences. And the second area of programmatic activities or engagement that we have is for violence prevention and sexual assault prevention on campus. And that particular area uses student engagement, especially peer-to-peer communication and training around bystander intervention. So we do a lot of work on campus with students about sexual assault prevention and also how to intervene safely if you see something that's happening. The other area of focus that we have in our department is adult reentry and parenting programs. And what that looks like is really providing engagement and services for students who are coming back to campus after an extended break. So you might have someone that went to college for a few years but didn't graduate and is looking to come back to campus. So we offer an open house or back to school night for families. So students can bring parents, grandparents, kids, loved ones, and really get to experience the campus together. Because when you are a returning student, it's not just you going to school, it's everybody going to school again. So we host a couple different family days where students can bring their kids and do things on campus. So those are really the three areas that we focus on in our office.
Nice.
That's
and then,
cool.
Tess, you talked a little bit about your documentary that you're working on. What made you pick the topic?
So I took a leadership class in one of my grad courses last semester, and the professor of that course really inspired me to really dive into the research surrounding women in leadership and all the issues that go into that. And it wasn't initially what I thought I was going to do for my grad project, and once I dove into the research, I was like, just so blown away about what women face today in corporate America and how far we've come, yet also how much further we need to go. And so I decided, I really want to hear from the voices today of people that are actually working in corporate America in those very top level executive positions.
Very cool. So March is Women's History Month. Why do you think this is something that's important to bring notice to or highlight?
I think the importance of Women's History Month, which it should be every day, right? We should always be recognizing the contributions that women have made in society. But I think it's a unique opportunity to really be intentional about the things that we highlight and also focusing on what's important to students. So what's important to our women students on campus, women identified students on campus, and what's going to help them, right, as they acclimate to campus and then also transition out of campus. What are the issues that they're facing? How can we make sure that they're successful in their careers and also here on campus? So.
Nice.
Yes,
And
I
Tess?
totally echo that. I think it's a time to celebrate how far we've come, but then also look to the future and be like, well, there's still work that needs to be done. And just
Right.
because we've accomplished a lot doesn't mean we have to take a back seat. So I think it's a time of celebration, also a time to look for the future.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And then touching on that a little bit, what kind of strides do you think women have already made in shattering the glass ceiling or changing social norms?
Such a great question. So I think we've made huge strides, right? You see women being presidents of Fortune 500 companies today, running countries, which is amazing, but the statistics are still really low. Only 4% of women in America are CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, and so it's still really low. And even though we've kind of cracked the glass ceiling, I wouldn't say it's shattered. I'd say we have a really long time until it's shattered. What the glass ceiling actually looks like, though, I think it's very industry specific. I think the glass ceiling looks different depending on the different industry that you're in. But I think we've definitely restructured what family norms look like, what a woman's role at home looks like, and I think that's really helped in women climbing that corporate ladder.
Very nice. And is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I would agree with much of what she said. I think when we think about the strides that women have made, and as Tess mentioned, we've come very far. And I think the glass ceiling is not only industry specific but also identity specific. So making sure that we understand that each woman has their own set of unique circumstances and challenges around their success and what that looks like. I think focusing on the inclusivity of women is really, really important right now. I think that's an area of growth and figuring out the specific needs of women, because what works for one woman won't work for another. I think the beauty of the idea of feminism is choice, right? And being supportive of the choices that women make, even if it's not the choice that you would make for yourself.
Right.
And how can we be supportive of one another and making sure that women have the option to make the choices that work best for them. So.
Very nice.
100%.
And then both of you kind of mentioned each women have different challenges and stuff. So I'd like to take it a little more personal and ask you if you've ever faced certain challenges because you are a woman, or maybe if you weren't taken as seriously.
I've definitely been a part of organization that was kind of a boys' club, and it was really hard to make any sort of strides in there unless you were one of the guys. And that is something that a lot of the women that I have interviewed echo in the documentary is that, women aren't always invited to go golfing. They're not invited to get drinks with the boys after, and work gets done there. And so it's really hard for women to kind of be a part of an organization when they're excluded in the social aspect of it. And my personal experience, I've had a little bit of that as well. But I know it exists on such a larger scale for other women too.
Right.
Yeah, I think I do a lot of work with students and leadership style. And so I think one of the things that I personally have had to balance in my career has been my leadership style. My leadership style tends to be a little bit more assertive, and that is not always looked at positively in certain circles or in certain situations. A lot of those attributes we define for men versus women. So I think that learning how to balance that has been really, really important in my career. And also just work-life balance is always a challenge, no matter what industry you're in. I'm in an industry that does very well in higher education with work-life balance and helping women find that for themselves. But it's still a challenge when you have a family, if you choose to have a family, and are you going to have drinks after work? Are you going to the soccer game? Are you, so trying to figure that out, I think is always something that women think about. Not that men don't, but it's different. There's different types of feelings associated with missing out on family things, I think, for women than it is for men. So
Definitely.
A lot of the women kind of echoed that too, that there's this mother's guilt that comes with it too. And so if you do choose to have a family, then what does that work-life balance gets even more complicated. Yeah.
And then what else did the women you interviewed talk about as far as like some obstacles maybe they faced in getting to those leadership positions?
So some of the women that I interviewed are from an older generation, and so they have really done so much work that actually we can benefit from. And they said that they have come and face gender bias head on, and they have had men tell them, one quote is that there will never be a skirt in leadership, right? Like we will never see women, and that was in the finance industry, and the finance industry is traditionally very male dominated. And she just didn't let that stop her, and she just showed her how capable she was, and she showed up every day, and she powered through, and now she is in a vice president role, which is absolutely amazing. But they have definitely experienced severe gender bias, which is just astonishing.
And then have you heard any stories or anything, Elisa?
I think, like Tess mentioned, it's very industry specific. I have a large network of friends. Some of them are stay-at-home moms, and so some of the challenges that I know some of those folks have faced is when to re-enter the workforce. How long do you stay out of the workforce after having children, and trying to figure that out. I mean, other obstacles. There's a child care, right? So wage gap, so there are definitely things that we're still working against and trying hard to kind of level the playing field. You have more women that are the head of household, right? So they are the primary breadwinner for their household, and they're still on average only earning 74 cents for every dollar that a man makes. If you throw race on top of that, then they're making even less, especially when it comes to African American or Black women or Latina women. So there's challenges, quite a few, but I think that we have a lot of women that are working on our behalf, and also allies, right? So we do have some allies who are non-women identified, but are still understand that the playing field needs to be leveled. So.
Very nice. And then taking this in a little more of a political direction, I guess, there have been a lot of women's marches recently. So I'd like to ask you a little bit about what your thoughts are on that, and how is that relevant to our society today?
I think the women's marches have turned, women and allies actually have come out in full force at some of these marches. And one of the things I think that is amazing about them is this is kind of the first time that we've seen people take a stance around some of these issues in this large of amount of people. We haven't seen anything like that recently. So I think that in itself is amazing. I think that some of the challenges that have come with those marches are women feeling like, where do I fit in, right? And so figuring out how to make sure that these marches and these movements are inclusive of other struggles. I know for a lot of Black and African American women, it was difficult. Where do we find our place in that movement? There are other challenges that we still face that we're trying to figure out. So is it our battle altogether, or is it just my burden alone? So the issue of trans women, and where do they fit into that movement? And so I think one of the things that we really have to look at is making sure that these movements are inclusive, and that people feel like they can show up and they can be supported, and also know that when it's another struggle or another burden, that those same group of individuals are going to show up and battle on their behalf. Right. So I think so there's some amazing things that have happened, but also some areas that that have been highlighted that we need to work on.
Totally. Yeah, no, I definitely echo that. I think similar to Women's History Month, it's a time to celebrate how far we've come, but then also a time for us to really say there's still work that needs to be done. And something that every single one of the women that I interviewed had echoed was that we need to have a change in policy when it comes to family leave. And that is probably the number one thing holding women back today, and that we need to support working women better. And so I think the Women's March is a time to really voice that and say, hey, these are things that need to change in order to support us.
The assumption and common practice that women and girls look after the home and the family is a stubborn and very real stereotype that not only discriminates against women, but limits men's participation and connection within the family and society. Paid parental leave is not about taking days off work. It's about creating the freedom to define roles, to choose how to invest time, and to establish new, positive cycles of behavior. We must ask ourselves, how will we be more tomorrow than we are today? The whole world grows when people like you and me take a stand, because we know that beyond the idea of how men and women are different, there is a deeper truth, that love is love and parents are parents. Thank you.
What are some other changes that possibly need to be made, whether in your own opinion or that you've heard from other people?
I would say family leave, 100% is what comes up. Also, I think calling out gender bias when you see it. Also, there's so many resources set in place for women now, so utilize those resources.
Okay.
Go to HR if you feel like you have experienced gender bias in your corporation. Just don't be silent. But I would have to say that family leave and not supporting working women is probably the #1 issue I see today.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think for me, in my industry and higher education and focusing on students, I would say mentorship and sponsorship. So finding women that you can work with to mentor you through your time here at the university and also after in your career. So thinking about who's going to sponsor you, and what that means is who's going to go to bat for you, who's going to say, hey, I know Tess or I know Cassidy Joe, they deserve an interview. I've seen their work. They have good work skills, they have good work ethic or whatever, anything like that. Who's going to promote you? So I think that men are very good about that. Men naturally have a tendency to find mentors in other men, whether it be socially or, really networking in a different way than women are used to. So I think working with women and coaching them on finding mentors, finding sponsors is really, really important, and something that for I think a lot of women, it's not something that they do naturally. Women are not don't necessarily brag about themselves or their accomplishments, and that starts from very young, right? So women are more about the team, right? So I have a family member who is applying for a scholarship. She's in medical school, has fought many obstacles to get there, and she asked me to review her personal statement. And so I'm reviewing her personal statement, and everything in it was we, so we had a serious conversation about how would this have been written by a man. They would have said, I did these things, so I think finding a mentor, finding a sponsor, somebody that's going to help you be able to promote and sell yourself is vital. And it's not a skill that we naturally do. We're taught to take care of each other, take care of the team. We work in a group. Men are naturally more individualistic and are okay with winning, are okay with being, with getting those types of accolades and being seen. Women are not naturally taught to do that. So I think mentorship and sponsorship, especially for students, is critical in their success after college.
Very nice. And then let's talk a little bit about CEDA. Can you explain a little bit about what that is?
So that actually came from the UN. So it's a bill that is theoretically supposed to end all the types of discrimination against women. And so, as you know, the United States hasn't ratified that bill. And so I think that's an issue, right? So why haven't we made progress there? But I think there are a lot of bills and laws that have been in place throughout the history of the United States that are now illegal, right? Or slavery used to be legal, so we knowing that there are laws that we have had in place or haven't had in place that have discriminated against certain groups of people. So I think that there's still work to be done. However, that's not the only thing that needs to be done, right? So we can pass bills all day. It doesn't mean that we'll see it on the ground, right? So I think focusing on the groundwork is really, really important. The bill might be ratified or it may not be by the United States. That shouldn't stop the work. It shouldn't stop the progress. We still have control over what we do and how we navigate our lives as women, and we should harness that power and use it to our benefit.
And so if this were to be passed, would you say it'd be a positive thing for women?
I think it would be a positive. I think it's more of a statement.
Okay.
Right? So it's a statement about what our values are as a society, what our values are, and how we, the value that we put on women globally. So I think, if anything, it would be more of a statement, because even if it's passed, we still have a gender wage gap. We still have issues with family leave. We still have issues with childcare and people not being able to afford the cost of childcare. We still have 4% of women in Fortune 500 companies who are CEOs. We still, so we still would have those challenges. But I think it would be a statement to say that we value women and their contributions to society, and we value them as people and whole individuals outside of marriage, children, or anything else. We value them as people. So statement, absolutely, but it doesn't change.
The groundwork still needs to be done, right?
Yeah, it's one thing to say, oh, we definitely support women, we're all equal, but then passing that and also going through and making sure that they actually show that that's what they believe in.
Yeah, and are the policies written by women for women? So because that's really where it starts, right? Making sure that women are in spaces where they can change policy, where they can operate from the lens of feminism and being a woman. So.
And also making sure it's inclusive of all women, which you said earlier.
Yeah.
Right.
Very nice. Anything you'd like to add to that, Tess?
No, I think you said it perfectly. Yeah, I loved it.
All right, and then I'd like to know, what's your advice for young women or just women in general?
Yeah, I would echo what you said. Get a mentor. It's huge. And even the women that I was interviewing for my documentary, they all had amazing mentors, either a woman or a male. But get a mentor that's going to be in your corner and kind of show you the ropes, and be good at what you do, and call out gender bias when you see it as well. I think that would be my advice.
Perfect. And Elisa?
I would say to young women, own it. If you're good at something, own it. If you did something, own it. Drop the we and start using I. Learn how to promote yourself. It's okay to promote yourself. It's okay to say, I am good at this. This is what I bring to the table. I think, like Tess mentioned, mentorship, sponsorship is key. But I would also say, figure out what's important to you. It's going to look different than it will from another woman, and that's okay. Be supportive of one another. Be supportive of one another's choices, even if it's not a choice that you would necessarily make. I think is powerful advice for young women.
Yeah.
Very nice. And then I also want to make sure, since you are the director of the Women's Center, how could someone find more information about the Women's Center?
We are located in University Hall 205. We have a number of student leadership opportunities. We also take interns each semester. There's lots of ways to get involved, even just coming to some of our events. Next Thursday, the 23rd, is the President's Reception for Women's History Month, and the theme is honoring trailblazing women. So we'll have an amazing keynote speaker. Some of our women's groups on campus will be performing different dances and also singing. So it's going to be a great night, just an opportunity to network, get involved, get engaged. I would encourage students to attend. We'll have food, so that's always
nice. And then there's social media sites for the Women's Center?
Yes. So social media is under CSUF WARC. So you can follow us. We use Facebook and also Instagram. We don't Snapchat. So, and we don't tweet right now. So.
All right. Thank you. And then is there anything else that either one of you would like to add today?
I would just say as women that we need to pay it forward and support other women, and kind of echoing everything we've said today is that even the choices you make is different from a choice another woman would make, that's okay, but we just need to support one another in the choices that we all want to make.
Right, perfect. Yeah. And then Elisa?
I would say thank you for your interest, and also figuring out platforms that you can use in order for the progression of women. I think is a powerful statement that you've made and contribution that you've made to your campus, just by opening the door for the conversation. So thank you.
I really appreciate both of you being here today and wanting to be a part of that conversation.
Of course.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys again. Really glad that you came on the show today. That's all the time that we have for today. I'd like to thank both of you once again for being here. You guys had some really great stuff to say, so I really appreciate it. Be sure to take a look at the links provided throughout the video to learn more about the Women's Center, CDOT, or anything else you want to know more about. Until next time, I'm your host, Cassidy Jo Fortin.